Michael Whitaker, que falará sobre a preparação das declarações sobre os artigos 2 e 3 do Protocolo. O Sr. Michael Whitaker é gerente da seção de salvaguardas internacionais do escritório do Programa Nacional de Segurança de Oak Ridge. Nesta posição, ele coordena o suporte técnico de Oak Ridge, a divisão de salvaguardas internacionais do Departamento de Energia dos Estados Unidos e ao Programa de Suporte Técnico norte-americano AIEA. Projetos específicos incluem a preparação para a implementação das salvaguardas da agência sobre o excesso de urânio de alto enriquecimento na planta Y12 de Oak Ridge. Suporte à rede de laboratórios analíticos do DOE, que analisam amostras ambientais da agência, e participação nas atividades realizadas sobre os acordos de cooperação de salvaguardas com a ABAC, a CNEM e a Autoridade Regulatória Nuclear Argentina. Atualmente, ele está envolvido nas preparações do Departamento de Energia dos Estados Unidos para a implementação do protocolo adicional naquele país e é membro do grupo de trabalho do DOE sobre o sistema de relatório do protocolo. O Sr. Whitaker atua na área de salvaguardas há cerca de 20 anos e é formado em Engenharia Mecânica e Gestão de Engenharia pela Universidade de Tennessee. Would you please?
Good morning. Buenos dias. First of all, I'd like to thank VOG for this opportunity to speak with you here today on this timely, emotional topic of the additional protocol. It is a real privilege to be able to participate in this meeting, and it's always a pleasure to come down here and visit with you, to see this region of the world, and to see many of you that I've worked with in the past again. So thanks again for this opportunity. The United States and the International Atomic Energy Agency signed the additional protocol on June 12, 1998, so just nearly 2 years ago. During the negotiation of the model protocol, the nuclear weapon states were asked to make some type of a statement or a commitment regarding the extent to which that they would incorporate the new measures into their voluntary offer safeguards agreements. At that time, President Clinton stated that the United States would accept the protocol in its entirety and apply all of its provisions except where they involved information or locations of direct national security significance to the United States. Today, I want to share with you some of the activities that are currently underway in the United States to prepare for those declarations that are required in Articles 2 and 3. These activities include a number of awareness tutorials, some calls for information to the actual facilities. We've done several mock inspections. There have been numerous site assessments, and we've initiated the development of our reporting system. While these preparations are being pursued by the combined United States interagency, much of the emphasis thus far has been placed upon the Department of Energy sites. So most of my discussion today will share with you the information that has been gathered from these exercises at the DOE facilities. Many of the preparatory activities related to implementation were actually initiated prior to the signing of the agreement. Back in March of 1997, 3 years ago, the Department of Energy established a Strengthened Safeguards Working Group to discuss the protocol issues. This group was comprised by the various program offices within the Department of Energy, which included the offices of Nuclear Energy, Environmental Management, Defense Programs, Fissile Material Disposition, and obviously the Non-Proliferation and National Security Office. The key objective of this group was to identify those programs engaged in activities that would appear to qualify for declaration under the additional protocol. Initially, these meetings among the program offices were held by their representatives at the headquarters organizations. But later in the calendar year of 1997, the working group expanded its outreach program to the DOE sites. And this was done through a series of tutorials and mock inspections. During the last 6 months of 1997, tutorials were conducted at 6 of the key Department of Energy facilities that could potentially have declarable activities. These included laboratories and production facilities located at the Argonne West facility, the Brookhaven National Laboratory, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Los Alamos National Laboratory, the Savannah River site, and at the Oak Ridge Complex where I work. These tutorials basically covered the history leading up to the protocol and then went through the protocol article by article, covering much of the information that Ms. Cooley covered this morning, but they were able to stretch it to a full morning of presentations. The site representatives were then asked to describe activities occurring at their site that could potentially be recordable. There was a very extensive question and answer session with much of the emotion that I'm sure you've shared internally within your organizations. And then many of the sites actually arranged tours of some of the areas so that the headquarters staff and field office representatives could kind of see firsthand what some of these areas would look like. As a result of these tutorials, the department obtained some very valuable information which helped provide support during the negotiation for the protocol with the IAEA. And then that formed the basis for DOE's planning for eventual implementation. To obtain some practical experience with preparing site declarations and hosting inspections, the department conducted a mock inspection at one of its facilities in December of 1997. The Argonne West facility, located in the state of Idaho, was selected for this mock inspection because it contains many of the elements of the entire nuclear fuel cycle. During the mock inspection, 3 teams were established to play the roles of the site, the U.S. government, and the International Atomic Energy Agency. Preparatory activities that was completed by the site teams included the compilation of all the data and information needed for a complete site declaration. And this included the site description with the site boundaries, and it contained a very extensive list of potentially reportable activities. The inspection team, during the mock exercise, then sought to verify these site declarations through requests for access and information, through visual observation, and all of the other activities provided for in the protocol. 3 different scenarios were designed involving 3 different levels of access, and then the teams went through each of these, and so it provided very valuable information for us. While the exercise itself did not reveal any fundamental problems with providing timely access, it did confirm a number of the implementation issues that I guess I'll speak as a site, that we at the site told headquarters that we would have in trying to implement this. At complex installations that contain a wide range of nuclear activities, and more importantly for the United States, a mixture of civilian activities versus activities with activities of national security significance, a very considerable amount of time and effort is needed to prepare these site declarations and then to make the provisions for access. In just the 3-week period prior to the inspection, the site expended over 100 work days of effort just for preparing for this mock inspection. Also, the increasing health, safety, and security regulations at the Department of Energy facilities also is making it very difficult to meet the physical access reporting timelines that are included in the protocol. So as the preparations continue, it's expected that each individual site, being different in nature, is going to have site-specific procedures and guidelines for implementing the protocol. In April of last year, the Department of Energy, through its Office of Non-Proliferation and National Security, issued the first official data call to the DOE field offices for information that would then lead to the U.S. declaration. A request was made for information on all potentially declarable nuclear fuel cycle related research and development and manufacturing activities that are sponsored and authorized by the Department of Energy. A month later, in May, the department followed up this data call with an interactive television broadcast among all the Department of Energy sites and their field offices that would provide additional guidance on first how to fill out this request for information from headquarters, allow the site organizations to ask questions, and then again it provided a brief tutorial covering the relevant background and how this information was going to be used. So the department has done a number of efforts to try to open or establish and open lines of communications with those actual sites that are actually going to be doing the implementing. Responses have now been received from all the field organization, and DOE has created an internal information database for maintaining the records of these responses. As expected, the reportable activities are spread widely throughout the entire Department of Energy complex, and these programs are all funded by a wide variety of sponsors, including nuclear energy, environmental management, and materials disposition. In addition to these DOE-sponsored activities, this is addressing sort of the question that Pablo raised this morning. There are a number of activities hosted at the Department of Energy sites that are sponsored by other organizations, either other governments or in cooperation with private companies. And so DOE is beginning to investigate these activities, and then the legal authority that they have to provide information and access to the IAEA for some of these public activities that are going on at the site. And the offices of the general counsels of both the Department of Energy and the Department of State are currently trying to address the issue of what legal authority the government has in this area and what additional legal authority would be necessary prior to the ratification of the protocol. So we too have stumbled over to this question, and we don't have an answer right now either, and in a lot of situations it is a case-by-case basis. This year, more emphasis is being placed on the actual reporting system itself. 4 months ago, in February, the Department of Energy established a protocol reporting system working group. They're big into establishing working groups. This working group has been tasked with developing the functional capabilities for the system for the U.S. government system. It's comprised of representatives from the Department of Energy, its laboratories, Department of State, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the Energy Information Agency. The protocol system, once it's put together, will serve as the system of record for all information reported by the U.S. government to the IAEA under the terms of the additional protocol. The first step was to do a feasibility statement of what this system might look like, and 3 specific options were examined. First, looking at either doing a simple paper system for the reporting. Second, looking at modifying some existing database that was being used for our inventories. And thirdly, look at creating a new dedicated reporting system. Obviously, a paper system would meet the requirements initially, but we're expecting to have a fairly extensive listing of activities, and then being able to evaluate the changes and the updates. I think the paper system has basically been ruled out. Secondly, we did a survey of existing systems, such as our existing national system for our inventories and transactions, but it and others like it seem to have different fields, and we did not want to distract too much from their required activities, and plus the protocol database may need some additional features such as mapping, site layouts, other activities that was really outside the scope of these other systems. So right now, the United States is looking strongly towards the creation of a dedicated system. The group has completed its reviews, has drafted its feasibility statements, and is looking at putting together the final system requirements document and the statement of work in July for the system. At this time, it has not been established whether it be a private company or some government company that would actually be in charge of creating and maintaining this database. But this working group is expected to continue oversight during the development phase and oversight during implementation. DOE has also begun the process of updating and revising the existing DOE orders, in particularly to address the new measures identified in the additional protocol, and to further define the roles and responsibilities at the Department of Energy headquarters, its field offices, and then at the sites itself. A revised order has been drafted and will be distributed to the field for review and comment in the near future. For those of you that may attend the Institute of Nuclear Materials Management Conference annual meeting in July in New Orleans, Mark Killinger from Pacific Northwest Laboratories presenting a paper on the status of this DOE order. So he'll have more details on it. And in addition, the Department of Energy's International Safeguards Division is preparing an implementation manual that will basically translate the DOE order into English such that the sites may have a better clue as to what they're actually supposed to be doing. Following the distribution of these documents, a workshop will be held at one of the DOE headquarters offices to invite the field organizations up to make comments and to review the document and to make the modifications as necessary. And then this order will pass through our normal preparation process. In regards to site access, the Department of Energy is currently in a situation of really having to balance a lot of conflicting concerns. On one hand, a lot of the recent treaties, such as the additional protocol and some additional comprehensive test ban treaties, etc., call for greater access within the DOE sites with relatively little notice to these facilities by foreign inspectors. On the other hand, there's been a lot of recent press reports concerning some real and more perceived risk associated with the access granted by many of the non-U.S. citizens that work at some of the Department of Energy sites. And there has been a wide public attention. There's been requests and mandates from our Congress and others for greater access controls by all non-U.S. citizens visiting any sites for any reasons. So at the same time, we're being tugged in two different directions. In fact, the Department of Energy has recently revised its order on foreign national visits and assignments, and the current version excludes some of the exceptions in the previous order that were granted for IAEA inspections under the voluntary offer agreement. So we've got two sides pulling against each other. One of the greatest challenges, I guess similar to this, that faces the United States in preparing for implementing the protocol is the obligation placed upon nuclear weapon states in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In Article 1, the weapon states make a commitment not to assist any other state in the manufacture or otherwise acquisition of nuclear weapons. In particular, to the United States, we cannot divulge to IAEA inspectors the information currently classified as restricted data. Thus, the U.S. IAEA protocol contains a couple of sub-articles within Article 1 that specifically exclude activities of direct national security significance to the United States and explicitly provides for the use of managed access to protect national security activities, information, and locations. Otherwise, the United States Protocol is identical to the Model Protocol. To fulfill the U.S. commitment to implement the protocol to the fullest extent possible while preventing any improper dissemination of national security information, the Department of Energy has been conducting assessments of each site with declarable activities under Articles 2 and 3. In the event that the declarable activity is located in a site where there may be national security activities conducted, the United States will be using managed access to the extent possible to provide for the inspectors to be able to accomplish their mission. Features of managed access could include specialized access routes, turning off any sensitive or classified computers while the inspection is being conducted, or shrouding some equipment associated with non-declarable activities. The Department of Energy does have a considerable experience with managed access within strategic facilities, and the most representative case is probably the current inspection by the IAEA of excess weapons material stored at 3 Department of Energy sites. These inspections are currently conducted under the terms of the U.S. Voluntary Offer Safeguards Agreement. And highly enriched uranium and plutonium that has been declared excess to U.S. needs has been placed in storage vaults at the Oak Ridge Y-12 plant where I work, at the Hanford Reservation, and at the Savannah River site. These storage vaults, in some cases, are located deep within the heart of national security activities, but arrangements have been successfully made with the IAEA for the IAEA to have complete access to the storage locations and to have all the information that they need to conduct their inspections to be able to obtain independent verification of the declarations that have been made by the U.S. concerning this material. At each of these sites, the inspectors are provided with all the resources and information they need to complete their mission, while the site itself has been able to minimize the risk of any disclosure of any other sensitive information. In cases where managed access cannot effectively prevent the disclosure of national security information, the U.S. will be forced to invoke a national security exclusion provision. I mentioned earlier that implementation of the protocol at the Department of Energy facilities involve a number of other governmental agencies, most notably our Department of Defense, that sponsors a fair amount of work on national security projects, and this work is conducted at the Department of Energy sites. Thus, the Department of Defense must also provide assurances that implementation of the protocol under the protocol will not compromise the national security activities or information from these programs. As you might imagine, the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense do not naturally work together, since sometimes their goals and objectives are competing, but they have, over the last couple of years, establish a program where they are jointly working together to resolve this question of implementation. Again, this activity began prior to the signing of the agreement, and it's still continuing. In April of 1998, the Department of Energy and Department of Defense conducted a tabletop exercise at the Savannah River site to gain information on how these inspections would be conducted. Following this, the Department of Defense conducted a series of assessments, again at the key Department of Energy sites where they did work. A comprehensive team representing each of the military branches were assembled to conduct assessments of the DOE sites and to review the nature of the specific work locations of where DOD, Department of Defense, activities are conducted. Of particular interest was the relationship between the Department of Defense work and the location of activities that may be reported under the protocol. Extensive interviews were conducted with the principal points of contact at the sites. And as necessary, the assessment teams again visited many of the work areas to look at access routes and ways in which managed access can be implemented. These assessments proved to be extremely beneficial. First of all, they enabled the Department of Defense to evaluate the impact of the protocol-related activities such that they were able to prepare procedures, or such that procedures have been identified to be prepared to account for any Department of Defense interest where necessary. The Department of Energy gained a much better understanding of the Department of Defense interest at their sites. And most importantly, a working relationship was established between the two departments that will be invaluable in the future when the IAEA begins to conduct any protocol-related inspections. In parallel with these, the United States Interagency Organization has been preparing a detailed set of interagency procedures that will assist in the implementations. These procedures will govern the processes for collecting and declaring information to the IAEA, for responding to the IAEA for any requests for clarifications or inconsistencies or other information, and for responding to the IAEA notices of complementary access. Considerable progress has been made in drafting these procedures and in reaching agreement on their content. Some of the key factors, again, are the legal requirements for interacting with many of the private organizations. The next major step is for the protocol to be presented to the U.S. Senate for its advice and consent. Much of the preparatory work has been completed or is actively in progress. It was originally hoped that the protocol would have been submitted to the Senate prior to the NPT review conference that was completed last month, but obviously that target date is now passed. The current schedule is to submit the protocol to Congress by the end of the calendar year. Our schedule to bring the protocol into force will be dependent upon when the Senate takes action. The administration expects that the protocol will receive serious attention, as it does with all treaties, so the length of time that is before Congress is difficult to estimate. Because the Senate is already dealing with a large body of work related to the nuclear area, including the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, we cannot really predict this time when Senate consent to ratification will be provided. In the meantime, as we move towards ratification, the Department of Energy is continuing to sponsor protocol-related educational and awareness programs and workshops as necessary. Additional tutorials have been set at various DOE sites and DOE headquarters. Sessions addressing the additional protocol continue to be a key component of tutorials that the International Safeguards Division conducts in conjunction with the Institute of Nuclear Material Management meetings. And the U.S. is also discussing with the IAEA right now preliminary plans to do some type of a joint exercise at a DOE facility in the future. Again, such an exercise would include a mock inspection that would give the IAEA the opportunity to test and evaluate some of its procedures and verification methods, but more importantly would provide us the opportunity to further evaluate site impacts and then the adequacy of our preparations. I guess in closing, I want to again emphasize that the United States government intent is to broadly apply the additional protocol to U.S. nuclear-related sites and locations. As I've described, this has required extensive planning and evaluations, and we are continuing to make progress through a very long list of tasks that must be completed prior to entering force. Again, I'd like to thank ABAC for this opportunity, and I would like to thank you for your time and attention. Any questions?
member state would make a declaration similar to that of President Clinton in connection with the additional protocol, it will be acceptable to the agency, to the International Atomic Energy Agency. That's why, well, you haven't had the presentation.
Well, I guess I do not fully understand the question in that the protocol, I guess the terms of agreement will be what is actually ratified by the U.S. Senate.
Well, I'm referring to the slide that
Yes.
you showed at the very beginning when you have a declaration from President Clinton. So if you show that one,
Right.
and then the audience.
Well, I
refer
guess,
to that. I wonder if
as
the
I'm being
agency would accept that.
prompted, I guess the difference is the difference in protocols between weapon states and non-weapon states, where the weapon states has this obligation under Article 1 of the NPT not to disclose certain national security information. Therefore, we cannot provide the exact same level of access as that of a non-weapon state. So the statement made by our president was, to the fullest extent possible, we will apply it exactly the same as the non-weapon states, but only protecting only those things directly associated with the national security.
Thank you, because that's my question.
Thank you, Jill, for giving me the answer.
Yes.
Yes, sir, Mr. Florido.
The invocation of national security could be a very complex and gray zone because it's a very well-known issue that in the past and even this year, usually military technology could be translated to civilian work. So you could have research and development for military, and in 1 year, it's very usual that a country could use this to a civilian purposes. So this is a very complex gray zone.
I believe I said it was a very important challenge for the United States on how to address this. I mean, you're exactly right. There is not a clean distinction between the activities. And we are working hard to, I said, to the extent possible, apply the protocol fully. Any more questions? Well, thank you again for your time, and feel free to catch me later.